Hi, intuitive viewers, and welcome. Welcome to this. It's time for my near-death experience, a message of hope. And I want to introduce my co-host on this particular show, Kevin the Healing Medium.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi,
how's
Saundra.
it going?
Good.
Are you ready for another story?
Yes, I'm excited about this. And we've been talking for a little bit. And oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this one.
Yeah, this is a wild one, and it's also, I think, a very important one, because, and I do want to give a warning, or just let people know that we are going to be talking about suicide in this episode. So if that's a trigger for you or anything like that, just so you're prepared and it's a heavy subject, but I think we need to talk about it. And I think Kevin, we always talk about that our hope every time we do this is to hopefully give people hope, obviously, but also to help them to not be afraid of death, to not to be confident that they will see their loved ones again. I think we want it to be a comfort to people. Is there anything you want to add about that?
Yeah, just in that truth, in the telling of the story, it's the reminders. And so the comfort around it, we can be in the discomfort, but be in our truth. And that kind of brings us to a place of being together in that connectiveness. So yeah, it's perfect. And so I appreciate you mentioning that this can be challenging for people, but talking about it is the way to move through that. So I'm really excited.
Yeah. So with that, let me introduce Saundra. Saundra is a Waldorf early childhood educator. She has also had an amazing near-death experience when she was only 19 years old. But I would think that I would not be exaggerating to say it changed your life, right?
Right.
Yeah. So why don't you take us in from the beginning? What was happening in your life before your near-death experience, and what brought you to that point? And also, if you could also share any kind of religious upbringing you had, any understanding you had of the other side up to that point.
I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and it was the early 70s. And I had participated as a young girl, wasn't quite a teenager yet, in the joy of the 60s, music, freedom, marching, the Kennedys, just all of it. And living in Los Angeles was just the most amazing place to be. And my upbringing with my parents, my mom is an orphan, and my dad was sent away to boarding school at 3 years old in Paris, France. So both of them did not have parental guidance. Both were in a way, just went into their institutions that cared for them. Two very different institutions, but nonetheless, they didn't have they didn't have parents around them. So when my parents began to parent, they didn't quite know what they were doing, and they did the best they can. There was a roof over our heads. There was, school clothes and food, and we had everything we needed. And, but not much more. There wasn't a vision for us. There wasn't discipline or boundaries at all. My parents they weren't violent. They didn't beat us. They didn't drink. they just didn't have religion, and they didn't have parenting skills. So, and I know that, you know that, we kind of choose our parents. So I must have chosen them for a reason, and so I'm okay with that. As I was growing up in LA, relationships started to happen, puberty started to happen. Unbelievable music was surrounding me. My brother got into music, and I was around musicians all the time. And relationships started to happen. I think I already said that. And heartbreak started to happen. And when you're young and you experience heartbreak, it's very it's almost like you get hit by lightning. It paralyzes you unless you have someone to guide you and talk to you and nurture you through this wound or wounds, depending. I had always been very close. I always felt, as a young child in nursery school, I remember feeling very close to God, very close. Almost like I was, leaning against his cheek, very close. His breath was, on my shoulder. There was no separation. And I remember struggling in school as a young child, trying to learn how to read and learning time. That was a rough one, because I wasn't made up of that stuff. Anyway, so, right from the beginning, there was a clear understanding that I wasn't like everyone else. I wasn't in the best reading group, and, I was like a C student, but I struggled to be a C student. I struggled to be a student, period. And so we'll go forward again to relationships and heartbreak. And there was just a few experiences with my brother getting involved in heavy drugs, and my mom being so ill-equipped, and just all of it. There were so many ingredients. It would take too long to give you all the recipe. But I just started to have this incredibly sad longing and feeling. And, and when you live there in that sadness, it's not depression. There's a difference. I've experienced depression. It's not depression at all. It's sadness. And when you experience sadness, you never forget it. It's so intense. It's so painful. And so I used all my will forces just to hide that. When I was in school or socializing, and, I would hide that. But the longing started to grow at 16, just not wanting to be here anymore. It was I had taken on a little too much. And I had just taken on a little too much. And there was no one around, I was all alone. And if I did try and talk about it to someone, no one could relate. I remember I was with my friend Karen, and I was sitting on her bed talking to her, and I could remember, she was kind of horrified at, how sad I was. So, I just lifted up and out I went, to become more relatable. And I got really good at that. And And then one day I was driving over Coldwater Canyon. And I just knew that tonight was the night. And the minute I there was a voice. That's right. There was a voice that said, tonight is the night. And I was like, oh. And so then I drove slower. It was dark out, but it was one of those summer nights where it was Santa Ana winds, and I was driving over the canyon, and I was looking at everything for the last time. Everything, the trees. And in those days, the valley didn't have a lot of sidewalks. Can you believe that? I don't know if you guys know California, Los Angeles, but yeah, that dates me. But in the valley, there was very few sidewalks. It was just country out there with, orange groves. And that's where my parents had bought a house. And it was this incredible peace. It was as if I was just going through the motions. There was no thought about it. I just got home. I took a shower. I went in my dad had a little medicine cabinet. My mom had hers her bathroom on the other side. They both had separate bathrooms, which maybe is, a secret to a good marriage. But anyway, right? They never divorced. Yeah, they were fine. Everyone was fine. It was me, and I wasn't fine. Anyway, so I went into my dad's medicine cabinet and I took his pain medication because he had back problems. And I just took them all as calmly as can be. Took a shower or a bath, I can't remember, put on my nightgown, put on some music and went to sleep. And in my mind, I thought, I'm just not going to wake up. It wasn't like any kind of spiritual or, it wasn't like I had to, it was just as natural as breathing. And when I lied down, I was listening to the music, and right here, a teeny little pin drop light came, but it was different. It was piercing. It was really bright. And so it was easy to be with it because it kind of took up, it brought you to it. And then I just stayed with it. And out I went, out I went. And there was, so much love. So, just imagine if, infinity, that energy that cannot be seen with the naked eye, the invisible energy, just imagine if all of that, just was loving you. And it felt like, when I was explaining it earlier, it's like if you were on fire, there's a match and you just put it in water. And it was like this instant relief. All the pain was gone. And there was such a welcoming. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You suffered so much. I'm so sorry. It was this incredible embrace of this infinite power. And now I can talk about all kinds of aspects of it if you want, of what I experienced.
Well, and I know that it's hard because
this is a hard one.
From what I understand, that the other side, it doesn't have time the way that we have time. Time is not necessarily chronological, but if we can kind of go chronologically in a way. So maybe,
Okay.
so this point where you're kind of embraced by light, basically, you're kind of in this just blending with source, I guess you would say, a source
Yeah.
energy or the one.
Yeah.
And did
And
it feel like home?
yeah. And healing, a renewal, just a complete washing away of all of that. And just just being, yeah, it was definitely home. It was definitely home. And when you were in that light, even though it was who you were, there was if you pulled back a little bit, you could separate a little bit from it, and then you could become one. Like at any given time, you can separate a little bit and just do the happy dance and then go back.
Saundra, did you feel like yourself? Did you still feel like Saundra?
Yeah. I felt, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I felt, yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, yeah. Yeah. We are, like, someone asked me once, how does it feel to be, 68 years old? Because I'm 68 and a half. And I said, I've always been the same age. My body is 68, but I've always been the same age. We always are who we are.
Right.
And everything else changes. But I was me.
Yeah.
I was
Still
definitely
you.
me. And but I'm just going to share just a little bit of the sensation of being there.
Of course. Yeah.
So when you're there, when you're one with like that, and the love, so much love. It's also full of motion, and it's completely still all at the same time.
Mm.
That when you're with that, it's so still and so beautiful. But at the same time, if you pull back a little, you're falling in it. And then if you pull up a little bit, you're completely expanding in it. And then if you pull up a little more, you're flying in it. It's swirling and moving and still all at the same time. It's full of movement, and yet it's completely still. And and really, I think what's most important is that I want to share is the love.
Right.
That there's so much love, and that is who we are. It's not like our idea of love, I love vanilla ice cream, or like, or I love him. The thing is that when you experience love for either an individual or for a song that you hear or an individual that's in your life, all the love that you feel is inside you. All the love you've ever felt in your entire life from anything, a human being, a song, a poem, a book, an outfit, whatever, all the love you've ever felt in your life is inside you. You feel love inside you. Love is inside you. And we search on the outside for love because we tap into it. You know, those incredible harmonies with songs, you know, the old Beatles, you know, or just, you know, or a verse, you know, a beautiful verse, or flowers, or nature, right? Or, you know, intimacy with another one, you know, all of that. Where do you feel the love? Where are you feeling it's inside you?
Right.
So that was like a real, that helped a lot to be reminded of that, of like, you know, that helped, that, you know, to remember that. And yeah. So
Saundra, did you have a life review when you were there?
yeah,
What was that like?
it was, I can't remember it was not your dying life review,
Mm-hmm.
because that's in depth and that will take you back to day one. And, you know, this was more of a current one, you know,
Right.
you know, and one thing, you know, and through that life review, you know, I was shown, you know, how disconnected I was, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, I started to feel a lot of love for me, you know, a lot of compassion. I was like, oh gosh, that poor girl, you know. And I was like sitting, you know, on the boss's lap, you know, when you're with him. Well, usually your elders or your guides, you know, will take you through the life review. And I remember meeting a few of them. There wasn't that many. I think there was like 3. It wasn't like I was created by, you know, a whole team of people. You know, it was just, and I can't even remember them. They didn't make an impression. I'm a little embarrassed about that. Because to this day, I'm still trying to find them. Okay, anyway, that's a whole other episode. Okay, but there was at some point, it was just like, oh, I'll do it. You know, so, you know, he did it. And I know that sounds, you know, everyone's story is different.
Yeah.
But I was very, very, I couldn't like let him go. Do you know what I mean? And again, I'm using him for lack of a better word, because it definitely wasn't a man. But I couldn't, you know what I mean? Once I, you know, was there, I wasn't going to lighten up at all, you know. And so he took me through it. And then you know, he took me through the whole self-loathing, going through puberty and all this stuff. And it was just like, he laughed with me. Like there's a sense of humor.
Mhm.
It has a sense of humor. I'm like, oh my God, are you looking at the, you know, and it was like, yeah, you know, it was, and it was just kind of like, he took me through all the dark corners of all the oogie boogies. And we had a couple laughs. And then he let me go and I was able to just bask. You know, the more you bask, the more you merge, the happier you are, the happier you are.
Wow. I feel this is the perfect moment to be.
I know. Am I just rambling? I'm sorry.
No, it's beautiful, Saundra. I love it.
I have no time when I'm talking about it. I have an order.
It's so perfect. No, it's perfect. You're there and you're in this space and you're in this knowing of the oneness, and it's still, and we're in that energy, we're in that awareness. And as you lean in and you lean out, it brings you even deeper into it. So they want to go back to the part about the voice that you heard on that night. And I heard you say that tonight is the night. Two part of the question, had you heard that voice before and since, and do you have a better understanding now of what that actually meant?
Oh, I knew what it meant.
Mm.
Because, I instantly just knew that I was going to make an exit. And in saying that, let me just pause for a minute to whoever's watching this video. I'm not advocating, suicide. It just happened to be a part of my life path that I'm not hiding anymore, because there's wisdom there, and it's, it's a part of who I am, and it was clearly my life path, and you can't cross over to the other side and skirt anything. You have to, whatever was in your blueprint, you have to complete. And there's different ways. Some things are made in pencil, some things are made in pen. You could switch it up a bit when you're on the earth. Like sometimes when people, let's say, experience pain like I did, and they've got support, right? They'll go into therapy. They'll maybe go for a vacation or something and be by the ocean to meditate or something, right? And then they'll, take another route. In other words, if you are writing your blueprint and here's your destination, there's many avenues that you could take to get there. So there's the quick route that you think when you come down to earth, I'm going to do that one. Nothing's going to get in my way. This is going to be easy peasy, piece of cake, and then you come down, you're like, oh shit, this is hard. Life is hard. I think I'm going to take that route because it's a little softer and gentler, and it's more scenic, and it'll, and you can take that route. You know what I mean? And now I look back and I realize, like, oh, there was many opportunities for me to take a softer route, but I didn't have the eyes to see because I didn't have the support. And so really, one of the main reasons why I'm doing this video is to just let people know that if their heart is heavy and they're not comfortable being here, in a very real way, there's support out there. Just hang on and don't take yourself so seriously. I love that saying, you can either hold it like a feather or you can hold it like a brick. How are you going to take this challenge that you've been given? Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's the energy of tonight is the night, and you placing that voice separate from yourself, and then being in that space and that love. It was the reminder of that. And so, like you said, it's not to advocate in any single way whatsoever. It's just to be the reminder that we're not separate from it. And so that was like the bridging. So just the second part of that question, had you heard that voice before, or have you heard it since?
In elementary school, I was first introduced to an institution that my mom dropped me off at. It was very, very difficult for me. I mean, to a point where I couldn't, like, the teacher would be talking to me and I couldn't, it was like the Charlie Brown, wah, 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 like I couldn't comprehend. I was completely lost. I was completely lost. And that voice would guide me, what to say, where to go, and I remember going in the hallway. I would get a bathroom pass. I didn't have to go to the bathroom, but I would get the bathroom pass because when I would go to the ladies' room, I would be able to, there was this incredible view of trees and the earth, and I would be able to look at that, and that would help me. So every so often when it got to be a little too hairy, I would go to the bathroom and that voice would be there. So the voice was definitely not mine. Yeah. So yes, I had heard that voice before. Yeah. And it had guided me,
Yeah.
And yeah.
And Saundra, you talked about in a conversation we had before, you talked about being soft-boiled, and you said, can you talk about the part of your experience where
the
you
conveyor belt and everything? Oh God.
Yes, where you see the conveyor belt. Yeah.
All right. So before I even begin this part, I don't know if anyone's going to relate to this. This is the way I'm going to say it. And, here. All right. So when you're on the other side, when you're home and you're the same way you long to, in order to come down to earth, you have to long, you have to have a longing. And for each individual drop in that ocean, everyone's different. But you have your cluster of people. You have your, imagine if you take a quilt, a plaid quilt, and you cut it up in 300 pieces or something, and you just you're in the airplane, you just throw it over the earth, and it falls all over the earth, this one blanket of all these pieces. And in your lifetime, that whole blanket's going to come together. You're going to be with all your people, and you're going to find each other, And one day I was there. This was before suicide. This is before I came into this body. I was there, and just by habit, there's a certain area that you go to when you're getting ready to come. It's kind of like a conveyor belt, for lack of a better word, you guys. Mind you, it's not a conveyor belt. This is just, and you could fly all over the place. You go all over the place. You're just having a grand old time. And yeah. And I always would end up right back at his, with him. And I went there one day, and there was like a lot of my friends there, and I started to panic. So I went back and I was talking to him about it, and he's like, well, you're just going to, it's not your time yet. You're just going to have to wait. And I was getting a little nervous because, there was everybody and I wasn't ready. But I started to panic a little bit. And I would call every chance I could, I would ask, yeah, can I, and I would like get in line with them and act like I was there with them, going with all, and I'd be like pulled off, be like, just like this little kid, waiting to be tall enough to go on the ride at Disneyland. It's like, you're too short, you can't go on this ride. Okay, but it would be like, I'm tall enough. And anyway, I don't know if this even makes sense, but I'm just going to tell you what happened. And then finally, he gave in, because he always does, by the way. You have to be very persistent. And so they had to create a way for me to come, because there was no room in that batch. So we decided to be a twin. That was the only way. I think maybe there was another way too. I could have been a blended, but I didn't do a blended. I did the twin. And in becoming a twin, then I helped choose the parents. I was with my twin brother, David, or that essence, that soul, because I am a twin, by the way. That's how I got here. a little early, soft boiled. And yeah. And so that was fun. I helped him. And, he had to like move over a little bit because we were going to come together, and he was open to that. And, but, I was warned, it's going to be, if you just wait a little longer, but I couldn't, just my personality, you guys, I'm just so kookaburra, I'm so crazy. And so he made it so I could come a little early. And, we came, and of course we were premature. My mom said she could hold us in her hands. We were like two Cornish hens. It was the first and only time I was ever underweight. Okay. I was like 4 pounds or 3 pounds, we were in the incubator together for a while. But that whole thing of not being cooked enough, that soft boiled is the way, and because of that, I couldn't stay very long. I didn't homogenize enough, And now that I'm back, and sometimes when I'm with Monica or Rana or all my best friends and stuff, I can see, of course, they don't know this, but I'm like, oh, I could have waited a year or two more on the other side. We still would have been friends. It all would have been fine,
Right.
But I just
In
had
hindsight.
to go, I'm sorry, am I too close? Anyway.
No, you're fine.
So, yeah. So is that, yeah. So I just became a little soft boiled, you guys. And I had to go back when I was 19 and cook a little bit.
Yeah.
And so now, I'm back, and, I'm now a hard boiled egg, just like you guys.
Right. And
But it was an indirect way. It was a different way.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. In the coming back, you're in the NDE, and you're in that space, and it feels the way it felt for you. What was
awesome.
Your part in coming back?
Just tricking. He just trick. Any trick in the book. It was just like, I will be there with you. You will be fine. What about music? Don't you love music? Don't you travel inside and feel me when you listen to music? Aren't you close with me? He just kept. And then finally, there was so much love, and it was so much his wish, that I just said, he goes, anything you want, you can have anything you want. You can, what do you want? And I remember just to serve you, just to serve you, just to, And so down I went. And on the other side, well, not down, but more of a pouring back in the body, and when you pour back in, here's the spot that you exit and enter, that little soft spot. And when you enter back in your body, because there's just a teeny part of us that's in the body, like there's a whole vast, like, like when you pour water from the faucet in a pitcher or a glass, it's only as much as the glass will hold, right? But if you keep the water going, it's infinite water. In the same way, there's just so much of us that'll fit in this thing, in this. So, but you could connect to yourself in that infinite way.
Is that what we would call the higher self? Is that what we call the higher self?
Yeah, it's
a soul.
Yeah, it's just more of who you are. There's just a little bit of us in here, but it's enough. It's enough. It's all we need. But you pour back in, and you could feel it. That's why if a newborn baby, they're like, oh my God, they could feel it going into each finger. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like you, whoa, I made it, It's like, whoa, and I remember my friends were there, the Lombardos that I had grown up with, my dear friends, that Lisa and Patty Lombardo were there, and they were calling me to come back. So
Can you
it was,
take us through, Saundra, what was happening on the earth plane while this was going on? Because I know that in our pre-interview, you talked about actually rigor mortis had set in.
Yeah.
That's how gone you were.
I was gone.
Yeah.
And my
And your brother
David
found you?
Right.
Right.
It was at nighttime. I'm not going to do it in the middle of the day.
Right.
My parents were asleep. My brother was asleep. And my brother, David, had fallen asleep in the den. We had a big den. And every so often, one of us would just fall, watch in our day, we had something called $1 Million Movie. And you could just watch an old movie real late at night. There was this one movie. And I guess he had watched an old movie and fell asleep on the couch. So David was in the couch and I was in my room, and he just awoke. He just woke up and went into my room. It was definitely being, guided.
Prompted. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he's never gone in my room, like that in the middle of the night. And he tried to wake me, but I was stiff, and that freaked him out, So he woke up my dad, and they said that one arm was on my dad, one arm was on David, and they were trying to walk me. Meanwhile, my mom was on the phone calling 911, to come down. And then they came, put me on the stretcher, and I was DOA. I was pronounced, I was dead on arrival. And they, I had been dead a long time, but anyway, but they found me. And, but then they pumped my stomach, and they did, chicka boom, that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I must have woken up, because my body was awoken, but I wasn't awoken. And I was just in ICU. They were just keeping me going. Right. And visitors would come in and leave. And then when Lisa and Kathy came, I woke up. So, yeah. And, but I was gone a long, long time. I had to, heal and, deal with my path. I'm just a little too anxious,
Yeah.
I'm just a little too anxious and impatient. Right. And to this day, I struggle with that. But when I'm in it, I'm like, Saundra, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And what is Linda G says, ask for the most benevolent outcome. Mm-hmm. Don't ask for I want this to happen,
Right.
So I'm learning how to be a human being still, I'm learning. And that sadness has never returned, that, and I learned how to meditate. And so I'm good. I can't remember if I missed anything. I mean, I could talk about it forever.
Well, we could listen forever, because it's just so fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating.
Do you have any questions?
How did you integrate this experience into your life going, after this? How did you integrate it?
Well, there was no integration. When I came fully with the veil of amnesia, full on. And that was rough. It was like, because I remember opening my eyes, and there was Patty and Kathy. They didn't see that I opened my eyes. I had tubes and the IV, and everything. And I just remember closing my eyes back down and saying, maybe if I just close my eyes. It was just like, oh, I didn't do it. You know what I mean? Like, it was this, because that thought never came to me, that I wouldn't do it. Like I wouldn't,
Right. You wouldn't be successful.
right.
Yeah. Right.
And when you do attempt suicide and come back, you have to, especially if you're underage, as I was, you have to go to, you don't just go home and, you know, eat dinner. You have to go to, I think it's a 3-day hold somewhere. I was in this some kind of doctor's environment where they were watching me because they thought, and this is their logic, which is silly, but it's okay. It's their logic. But it's like, well, if you had it in you to take your own life, could you take another life? Like they had to see
Right.
who am I?
Was the time. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah,
so
they
I went
didn't
through a lot of
understand
therapy, which was fun. That was fun, but I
it.
still had no memory.
Wow.
So
And
when did it come back for you?
it came back when I was at the end of 20. I met a friend and she started telling me about knowledge, about meditation. That's the name of the meditation that I was taught. It's called knowledge because it's knowing. It's just, you're shown how to go within. And then I remembered. And I remember sitting in a meeting or in a group. And I was, I hadn't received knowledge yet because you have to go through you have to understand what you're about to be shown. And I was, and there was that voice, that said, I will find you. I will come. You'll find me. I'll be with you.
Mm.
And it was, through meditating, that I was able to connect.
Mm.
And then all the memories came back. You can imagine poor Rana, she was with me because Rana was my dear friend Rana had knowledge and she told me about this meditation. And you can imagine Rana, I just like turned into this sobbing, you know what I mean? It was just
I can't imagine how that would be just
it was
coming
like,
upon
and
you like
how
that.
it came? It came from the tip of my toes. All of a sudden, like my toes, like when you remember something now, it's right here. It's like, oh yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's like a aha moment, right?
Mhm.
And maybe if you're lucky, you could feel something, right?
Right.
So, but it's just pretty much here,
Mhm.
Memories. But my toes started, and it was everything. It was a full on memory. It was all of it, just all of it. It was amazing, but it was, you can imagine Rana, poor Rana, but she loves me, but it was, yeah, it was amazing. And, and from that experience, from remembering and meditating, continuing to meditate, I'm good to go. I may, I'm getting more hard boiled and more hard boiled. And next time, hopefully on my next roundabout, I will make sure, take my time.
Yeah.
Take my time, take my time, not be so anxious to, yeah.
Right. Well, Saundra, thank you so much for sharing that incredible experience. I feel so lucky to have heard that story. And anything else you want to add, Kevin, before we sign off here?
Yeah, just to echo what Kim said, thank you so much. Just being in the energy of it, the retelling and the sharing, I think it's so important. And in it, I'm curious if you have, because I think there was lots of them, the takeaways for me for sure, the messages of hope. Is there something specific that you would like to leave people with as far as that sense of hope?
Well, for me, whatever is happening in your life, you can handle it.
Mm.
It's the way that you hold it, just that thing with the feather or the brick. you know, you either hold it like a feather or you hold it like a brick. And life can be a burden if that's what you're holding, you know, but if you're like, oh, Pisha, I'm just going to put that over there and it will all work out. And I will be shown the right, you know, path to go on to deal with this, you know, this challenge, you know. And also one other thing, which, you know, sounds a little, I don't want to sound too morbid or anything, but life's really short.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just enjoy it. Just enjoy it, you know. And if you feel like you're slipping down a grease pole and you're feeling that horrible sadness, you know, reach out for help because it's there.
Yeah.
It's there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Saundra. Thank you, Kevin, as always. And thank you so much, Saundra, for sharing your story. What an incredible story. We're all so lucky to hear it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Everyone. Thank you.